Hey Julian, super nice to have you here.
Hi, Pedro.
Good morning for you.
Thanks for having
And
me.
it's been a while since we didn't talk personally, so it's nice. It's kind of a catch up online here so that others
Definitely.
can reap the benefit of this conversation. So I'm really excited about it. And yeah, so how are you doing today, Julian?
Good. I'm doing really good. I was just remembering that last time we met was at a very big conference that you guys organized in the Web3 crypto space. And that was a blast, but have been followed by some tough years, right? At least
Yeah,
for the Web3 tech community.
absolutely. Some tough years and then some boom years, and
Yeah.
now we're going back to the hard years again.
Mm,
It's like the
let's see.
cycles are going around.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, the fun thing about leading an infrastructure company is that you're not the flashy, most interesting startup, but you get to see under the hood. So for
Mhm.
us, as we do user onboarding, we kind of see the ebbs and flows, right, of users coming in, users going out, and it doesn't look as bad. Like um, not like in 2020 when there was just no onboardings happening for a while.
Hmm. No, I do think it's like, yeah, we're gonna get there, and we are definitely it's definitely getting so much more recognition. There are some challenges on the way still, though. But yes, I can totally see it. But I wanted to ask, yeah, like maybe you can share with us a bit about your story, or how you got to this space, and why why is this relevant for you? And because yeah.
Yeah, sure. So um, I used to code a little bit, which is not relevant for like the coding part, even though that was fun. But it was a really cool experiment because I felt like there was no gatekeeper keeping me from it. Like I could just do whatever as long as it worked, right? Um, I then went into finance. I started my career in finance because I thought it's the same logic. There's the market and you. There's no one standing in between. That proved to be pretty false, this hypothesis. And I also joined at a time when there was the big financial crisis, which was interesting because when things fall apart, you can see what they are made out of. And I left pretty disillusioned after 3 years and went back to university and did research on co-creation, crowdfunding, um, and that was 2011. And the space was really, really small. You know, you had like product crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter, some equity crowdfunding things. But I was pretty fascinated by that. That you don't just have like a division as in there are people with capital and then there are products and people that are consumers, but that you kind of mix that because me as a consumer, I know really well what I want and I know pretty well what I might want in the future, right? So you can mix that up. Um, that didn't go anywhere in terms of development. I mean, equity crowdfunding, it's not really a thing, is it? Um, and I got sucked into my first startup. I did that for nearly 5 years, so that it's not the topic that I'm excited about. Um, Went out and after a while had some time at hand that I deliberately took and went back to the crowdfunding part and was like, what's new? And what was new is were crypto and blockchains that back in 2017 everyone was talking about. It's kind of like, do I want to get into that field? But I took some time to look at the technical underlying, and I saw that this is extremely helpful for financial applications. I think that this is something that we need, and it even goes way beyond. So I thought, even if this is a hype, it's not going to go away because the functionality isn't going to go away. And therefore, the first time, the thing that I actually like a lot is very true. Like, there's no one in between who can tell you what to do or what not to do. But it needs to work, right? And this is how we started Fractal, because we wanted to contribute to that space, and we wanted to contribute something that is very basic, and we felt that this is identity. So we've done a lot of things around identity since 2017 when we founded Fractal. It was identity plus payment for enabling people to collect private sales. Identity plus data, which we pioneered in the edtech space, where you have your data ascribed to yourself. But we always came back to the really hard part, which is data, which is identity. Um, right now, Fractal is on a good way to reach 1 million users. We're very open about talking about user numbers. Others aren't, but we think we are in transparent, permissionless space, so kind of good practice. We have 960,000 users. Some of them are fully for regulatory use cases confirmed. But we are extremely excited to also look at the non-compliance use cases, as in like not for financial services, but for Web3 services, or applications that want to use one person, one vote, or want to make sure that there are real people interacting with them. So yeah, that's what we've been doing in the last 5 years and how I got into that space. Sorry for the long monologue.
No, no, no. That's really, really interesting. I mean, there's so much happening in the space of like identity. So I'm just very curious how it's going yeah, just to manifest, and how is it going to work over the next years as it consolidates. So and so the use cases that you have right now, maybe you tell us a bit about like what the use cases and how this like almost 1 million users are using it at this moment.
Yeah, you tapped into something that I'm quite excited about talking. So, I mean, yes, the ID space is pretty hot again. It has been hot before. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes and comes in waves, but there hasn't been really one player making big inroads, right? Like, I mean, the way that it works right now is you either have centralized huge services like Google and Facebook. They probably know everything about you, much more than like a government knows about you.
Yeah.
And they're using that for ad tech. They're, I think, deliberately not using that for some things because it would be really scary to understand as a user how much they know about yourself, about you.
Yeah.
Then there are other services that are typical the same Web 2, gatekeeper services that do that on a transactional basis. Um, we are a bit different here, where we work similar to how you check out with PayPal. You use Fractal for the check-in. So you
Hmm.
already have an account with Fractal. You ideally hold your own data in your own wallet, for example. Truth be told,
Hmm.
this is just a minimal use case right now, because most clients and users prefer something that is more managed, meaning that we hold the data on behalf of the clients and the users. We want to get away from that, right? So in the meantime, what we've seen, and we're looking at it as a spectrum, we've seen those typical Web 2 companies that are the gatekeepers of your data. And then we see all of those awesome ideas, Sovereign, Uport, Killed, just to name a few, that have great ideas and great standards, but see little traction in terms of actual users, actual people saying, yes, I built this into my flow, into my product, and we have 10,000, 100,000, a million users rushing through. That has not happened so far in terms of like bringing this to a more decentralized space. And this is where we see ourselves. We are not identity maximalist. We don't just want to have the pure technological standard and leave clients alone with the actual work, the messy work of identification and compliance, etc., etc. But we go kind of vertical. We go all the way. We build solutions that actually work, and they work across the spectrum. Meaning you have an actual onboarding journey, but you also have, as a client, you have a dashboard where you can take a look at the data, you have an API, and you also have a credential system. You can interact with users that have their own data in their own Fractal wallet.
Nice. Nice. Any scene that you built on Polkadot? I assume maybe on Kusama at the moment, or it's just directly on Polkadot?
So we didn't participate in a slot auction that would be
I see.
necessary to have like a Polkadot or Kusama based substrate.
I see.
Um, but we basically have the same without the shared security. Why is
I
that?
see.
Because we are going a very different way here, where we don't just want to build on Polkadot and tell the world like, hey, we are here, we have the best standard, come to our place to interact with us to get the credentials. Because we don't think that this is how the world works. People want to have this ability in an extremely simple way with as many users as possible right where they are. So we are going to the ecosystems themselves, like Avalanche, like Aurora, just to name a few. There are more coming up. And we build um, something for them that can be quite standardized, or it can be quite specific, because we don't get people to use decentralized identity if we don't build it in a way that they need it. And how the Fractal protocol comes in is that we sit on top of it and we sync the different identities across those different ecosystems.
Very interesting. Yes, I did talk a bit with Ingo from Kilt and try to understand how their system is working. But very interesting to see your approach. So you want to make a very interoperable approach, multi-chain approach, so that basically the users would not care where it's at; they just use it, right? That's what you.
Yeah, there is an inherent difference. So, I mean, compared to Kilt, for example, they have multiple use cases like ascribing, not just for users, but ascribing information about where a banana comes from in terms of um, products, ingredients, etc., etc. And you can do a whole lot. And we need that standard. That is important because it is so versatile. You can use it for so many use cases. You can also use it for identifying people or giving them an online persona, and that's also something that they go for. Um, but we see ourselves kind of sitting on top of that, where we make sense of those different credential systems everywhere to link them across all ecosystems.
So
While
basically, a user could say like it connects different types of credential systems with you, and you represent like one system that has all those certifications attached to it. How would that work?
So that's a very good question. So if you're looking at verifiable credentials, aka kind of your actual information that is
Hmm.
in a bucket, so like your username, your actual name, your nationality, you have that in a JSON file, right? Um,
Hmm.
so if we are looking at attestations where someone says, "Hmm, so we looked at Pedro's information, and that checks out. So I give you the KYC stamp. Here you
Yeah.
go." And then it says, well, your address, saying, okay, that worked out by Fractal or by whatever, whomever, right? The
Hmm.
thing is that this that attestation, you cannot go back to the actual data. It's like a chicken McNugget, right? Like you can't go back from that nugget to the chicken. That doesn't work.
Hmm.
But you can go from the chicken to the nugget. So if you have the data, you can see if that attestation is actually correct.
Hmm.
So if you, for example, have an attestation from someone else, the way that we see the future is that we distribute that across the chains, so it's available. Does someone want to use it? Maybe, maybe not. Do they trust Fractal? Maybe, maybe they don't because they're working with a different provider. So
Hmm.
it does open up the world for multiple vendors that provide verifications, and it provides you with a list of vendors that you want to trust. So you can say, I trust these 5 vendors, and I don't even need to have the information. I just trust the statement that they made, which is that you have been KYC'd.
I see. So yeah, understood. So which means like, yeah, but I mean, pretty much, I we would assume that also you want to have the information because you want to be able to talk to this user, unless you're doing something that. But I like this concept of like, okay, I would choose as a person or as a vendor, like even to say I trust those other vendors. So if this person comes here and is already trusted by them, then it's cool, kind of
But
approach. So
let me jump in there because that's exactly the difference. We only have the full service of like identifying a user
Mhm.
because we feel we needed to have a really great user experience that works,
Yeah,
or client experience for that matter. Because if we tell them, here's a technical framework that you can use, but you need to go and solve the compliance stuff yourself, you need to find a vendor that
yeah,
issues credentials in this way, forget it. No one's going to do it. They're all going to say, you know what? No one is using this right now anyway. So I'll just go back to my standard KYC provider that is super centralized, you know. That's the only reason why we have it. We would love if people would jank out the data, put that in their wallet, and it would be usable, just like that. But the problem with multi-sided marketplaces is, although even the Web3 companies are saying, we don't like centralized KYC,
yeah,
but no one is using DIDs, and the user is like, well, why should I get a DID? It's like there is no benefit for me having this in itself because
yeah.
no client, no vendor, no
Accept
exchange
it.
is using that, right? This is why we are saying like it is live now. We are spawning the system with 150,000 users because we can, because we have the information, because we are allowed to do so. They have given us the consent to it. So we solve one side of the chicken and egg problem. And now we are going out to the Web3 space and tell people like, hey, now it's actually that phase is over. You can't say anymore, no one uses it because it's right there in your own
Mhm.
ecosystem. There is a little bit of an obligation, maybe that's too harsh of a word, to now go and use it. And it doesn't need to be us, but please don't use centralized KYC services if you are a Web3 company.
Yeah, makes sense. And for any company to integrate, you just go basically to your developers link here, and I see you have your GitHub and your Gitbook sort of a link there, and then like a developer can just integrate that into their sort of a like onboarding of whatever system, the whatever website you have. You are muted right now. Whoops. I
Sorry about
unmuted
that.
yourself. Nice.
Um, exactly. This is not your typical flashy SaaS product where you just need to sign up, and as a non-engineer, it just works. But we're working with builders, with engineers that want to implement that into the on-chain logic, the smart contract logic. Um, we have an credential API where people can query for the user that they have in front of them without knowing who that is, aka the wallet address, um, and implement it and enable people that have been verified before to just magically interact with your product and um, with your smart contract.
Just as a curiosity, how does the decentralized KYC work in your case?
So as I said, it's a spectrum, meaning all the way to the right. Ideally, people would load their own data, the verifiable credential, into their wallet, into their data wallet. Ideally, this wouldn't just work with Fractal, but would be something that you could use in MetaMask, right? We're definitely not there yet. This is going to be 2 years, 3 years down the road. Others offer it, like, this is the standard model, but it's not being used, unfortunately. So we went back a little and said, okay, we'll back up. Let's have a side step. So what we also offer is a credential API where a user comes to your Web3 dApp and connects their wallet, and the dApp on the front end runs an API query to ask, hey, do you guys know this user? And we say, yeah, we might know this user. Can you have this user sign a message so that we know that it's the actual user and you're not just making random API call? The user signs a message and we pass on the check. There's something else that we're quite excited about, which is the registries. Registries are always deployed in certain environments. So let's say Avalanche in this case. So if you're building on Avalanche, you can just take a look at the registry, which is basically a smart contract of list, and be like, so this client here wants to sign up. Can you tell me if he or she is in the list? So I still don't know who that person is, but I know that Fractal KYC him or her, and they're good to go. So it's complex, it's messy. I just told you like 3 ways how to connect with us, more on the Web3 side. But there are like 3 more on the Web2 side. But that's life. There's not a clear solution to
Yet.
how we can solve identity. Yes, I agree with you. There will be one. The W3C standardization, for example, already helped. Tim Berners-Lee put his foot down, was like, no, we're not going to stall again. Here's the standard, go test it out. But you know what? This is how standard evolved anyway. Messy processes, people first settling on something, then seeing that it needs improvements, until it's clear that there's like, that everyone agrees like, yeah, this thing makes more sense, to be honest, and then everyone switched. Oh, they had 2 standards, wouldn't be the only market where 2 standards evolve. But yeah, wouldn't that be great, to have a standard way of doing things? Because then you could finally, and this is where we want to get to, you could finally attest data to this credential, or not to the credential, but to the DID that the user holds. So suddenly we don't have those big data silos that Google and Facebook use to their advantage to bully or to basically farm the whole internet, ex-China, because they were smart to just have them not like capture the whole market, but build their own ad tech system. But to have users own their own data, own their own reputation, own their own, or decide which side of their identity they want to show. Right now, I'm not the subject. I'm the object in the whole game. Like,
How would that work then? Because that means every interaction that the user does with this sort of wallet that is KYC, that is your identity, would that then some sort of change in the smart contract or NFT will be issued by every interaction? 'Cause if you were like to say, okay, this is my data, and that's where I'm interacted in the Web3 space, and that will have all this like relevant information of what I've done, in order for the user to own all the keys to that, how would you then track every interaction that the user does in a way that they own it?
So first of all, it's very clear to everyone that it can't look like cookies did back in the days. I mean, they're still around, but about to be shut off, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because from a privacy perspective, it's really bad if you just like leave a trail of like everywhere you've been to. I mean, imagine telling the store owner you're just visiting where you've been to for all locations in the last 30 days. It's absurd, but this is how the internet used to work. It is very sad though, because with cookies, kind of a little bit of the free web kind of died, because now you just have proprietary technology and data pools where no one else
Yeah,
has access to. So
yeah,
having said that, how do we want to build the new system? To be honest, we don't know yet. There are a couple of things. So some say, God forbid, don't put anything on chain. Just have verifiable credentials in your wallet, and then you're in charge of what you want to show. So you have different um, data packages that you might want to show just in your real life. If you go to your grandma, you might not want to reveal the rave type Berlin person that you also are, and that's okay, you know. um, or you go to your job and you are kind of a little bit of a different person, and that's also fine. Um, I think there would also be merits in writing things on chain, making things transparent. But just because they are on chain doesn't mean that you can attach them to a certain person. So I wouldn't have this one wallet that I control where I just describe everything to. So we know it's KYC'd. We know he likes to, he's a power user on Wikipedia or whatever. He likes playing Age of Empires too. No, I want to be able to separate those different identities, right? Um, so there are solutions to it. For example, you issue um, a sub address that you still control, and then you're able to show someone external, like, hey, those data points that you see on chain, I own them. So you kind of connect them for that person in this instance, and also off chain. Um, that's called selective disclosure, for example. There's really cool stuff, and it's close to be ready for prime time. And this is going to be super disruptive, because once we
yeah,
go from centralized to federalized, we
yeah,
will see a whole ecosystem flourishing in the ad tech
yeah.
space.
And this is the blood of the internet right now. Is this like metadata that the uh, big ones hold and make all the juice of the advertisement on, right? So this is the center point how the internet gets financed at the moment.
Exactly. And that's a big conflict, like even a big cultural conflict. I mean, you can see that on Twitter, right? Like Web 2 founders and Web 3 founders, they are actually super separated. And there's a lot of infighting, because they understand that the typical VC model of, you pour millions and millions into a model where that you subsidize to get everyone else out of competition, just to make sure that you get to this monopoly state, is
Yeah,
something where you don't only face backlash from regulators that finally understand that this is not great for society, specifically not for their own society, but also you have competition from people wanting to build better alternatives. And I think that the later, is the stronger one, um, because you can't just forbid something and then not have better alternatives, because Google is great. Their applications are awesome. I want to have that in my life. I just don't want them to control my online persona.
Interesting. And so, see this space evolving in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in respect to like these identities? In respect, how do you like where are we ideally in 5 years?
So, wow, this whole identity space is just something, right? I mean, we're looking at and it's so wild because there are so many things going on and so much funding also flowing in, and no one has cracked it. I mean, you look at like local initiatives like Verimi in Germany, 100 million in funding. What the hell did they do with all that money? They did, I don't know, bus stop advertisement. Like, hey, get your own identity here. For what, man? For what? So they just burned through, I don't know how much of that money already without getting anywhere. Plus, online, you don't be like, you know what? Today I'm going to the German internet. No, no one does that. You just surf wherever, you have products from wherever. Who cares which nationality this has? So I don't think that these are going somewhere. Funny enough, the only actual identity system that has been in place and does work is the Swedish bank ID system. In Sweden, no one KYCs anymore. They just KYC once with the bank because they managed to get to that equilibrium, that better equilibrium, where all the banks are like, you know what, that sucks. Let's band together to make it better. Nowhere else it has actually got to that equilibrium state. But coming back to the more interesting part, there have been tons of standards. And from my perspective, a standard that has no users is not really a standard, right? And you don't get to it if you just stay aloof and you want to just build great technology standards or implementations. You need people to use it. They need to have an inherent reason why they want to do it. And I feel the first company that actually can create those effects where they have so many users that people are flocking to it because it's still obviously the space or the market leader. And because of that, more people are coming there, more users are coming there. I think it will be really quick once this tipping point has been reached. But there is no obvious um, company right now to be extremely close to that tipping point, except Fractal, obviously. I'm joking a bit, but I think it's all about users. Yes, we have plenty, but compared even to like how many Web3 users are out there, it's still a drop in the ocean, right?
It's like, oh, how many Web3 users? It's like 100 million. I heard this data, but I don't know if that is. That means you have 1% of the market, if that was true.
Yeah, and then the 1 million are not even all fully verified, but for some we just have email. For some we know it's an actual human.
Uh,
But if we're looking at the core of the people that we have some or more information about, so at least being able to make sure it's a human, we're roughly talking about 450,000
mhm.
users. I mean, still could be zero point 0.5 of the market, 0.25. It's getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that the tipping point that could be us, could be someone else, will be reached in the next 1.5 years.
1.5 years. That's what you think.
Yeah. I think the time is right. People are starting to implement those systems um, because the market is ready and users are ready as well.
Understood. And how's your view into like, I mean, you've been in this crypto space for a while now, and guess once we met, you were helping companies to onboard into this and do ICOs, right? That was where you were mostly focused on.
We never did ICOs. We always did like identity and for a little while payment systems.
I see.
And we are still helping companies onboard users for multiple use cases, including also IDO launchpads.
I see.
Because we
Ideal
want to make
launchpads.
sure, yeah, because we want to make sure that um, it's a clean alternative to getting massive VC funding in, but
Yeah.
helping the space help itself while being compliant. And identity is the core
And how
thing
does
to
it
it.
work being a German GmbH and you have also your own token, right?
Hmm.
If I'm,
Yeah,
and how because I do know that many companies choose the path of doing this through other jurisdictions.
yeah.
How is it for you, and why did you choose to be a German limited company?
Because it was very important for us to do everything above board. And if you look into that, then it's not that difficult. And you can even directly talk to the regulator and tell them what you want to do and get an email back from them. And that was extremely simple. So, is it the most tax beneficial location? Probably not. But we didn't want to have like a setup where we're connected to some random place that we have nothing to do with. But when there is like a really good route, um, specifically in Germany.
Understood. And so all the companies that you help also to onboard are based in Germany. So you're helping German, and that's
No,
where you.
unfortunately, it's the other way around. We serve everyone except for German startups
I see.
because there is something that is very specific about Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, where you have to have a process that you cannot automate because you need to have another agent sitting right across from you. So just like we have this conversation, you would need to now show me like your identity, your ID card or passport. And we're like, it's an international business that we are having here. We have people from over 140 countries. We have clients from probably over 30 countries as well, at least. We're not building something extremely special that super sucks just for the German market. Sorry. We could,
Yeah.
and we actually did at one point, but the experience for users was just so bad that we said, I'm sorry, but this doesn't work well.
Yeah. Understood. And but still, you stay in Germany. That's very loyal. Yeah.
Mm, I mean, um, the thing that I like about the Web3 space is that you have less conversations about nationality. I mean, my co-founder is from Lisbon. We have four people or six, up to six people. Like four people come to the office regularly. Um, the rest is just sitting somewhere in Portugal, the US, and it doesn't really matter. And I would love to see things going to a solution where it doesn't really matter where you sit as well in the European Union, at least. That will make it so simple.
I mean, we are also a remote first organization. We are based in Estonia, so have a E
Yeah,
residency and so on. So I totally appreciate that because we do
yeah,
have people everywhere, and I totally understand that.
yeah,
And still, every jurisdiction has different qualities or different advantages and so on. And,
exactly. There are
and
advantages, and we made use of them here. And we feel over emphasizing and the jurisdiction is kind of taking so much focus away that, this is how we started, this is how we go forward. If I would found another company, I'd make an active choice where this is supposed to be, and then I'll probably stick with it as well. But, I like the upsides here. I think it's okay in general. So,
Nice.
not a big fan of like the bureaucracy, whining, like, ah, come on, guys, like, it's okay. Yeah, it's sometimes a pain in the butt. Um, but then you have different advantages.
Yeah, yeah, understood. And let's say if an organization wants to kind of like says like, hey, we kind of like what you're doing in Fractal. We wanna do a launch pad. Let's say, let's assume we wanted to do that. What would be the steps that an organization uh, has to do to come collaborate with you in that way? What forms of support do you offer?
So, I mean, ideally, it would just be as simple as if you were an e-commerce company and you want to implement a payment system. So, you want to build whatever, and you need the infrastructure piece of identifying users for whatever reason. You know, we kind of we give you that tool set where you can put in your parameters, as in like my lawyer told me that I need this, or um, I want to filter for actual users and I don't care about identification at all. Great. So you kind of calibrate it and you're like, I want the ID check on, or I want the proof of address check on, but source of funds I don't need. It's too bothersome, or it's not required, so I switch it off. This is what we allow you to do. You receive a link. You can get your people to that link, or you can ask your users for their Ethereum address or for their crypto address, and you check against that. If they don't have an account, you can send them to the link. If they do have an account, it works like magic. They just either click on a button and approve that you should receive the data, or they sign a message. That's
Understood.
it.
And then basically I can receive this data about the user. So whatever they have there, if it's like whatever I need, if they have that there, me as a vendor would receive that data.
If the user consented, so if
Yeah,
the
of
u
course.
if the pop-up said ID, address, etc., then this is what you get.
Got it. Yeah, very interesting. I mean, it does. It does. I mean, I guess there's so many use cases that need that, and yeah. And for example, I mean, I can already think about the use case on our metaverse infrastructure. We have like a white label solution, work with several, build different instances for different brands that then want to host their own metaverse space. And yeah, we are collaborating with like organizations that have over millions of users, and then it's like, how do they know which avatar it is? Or you could kind of make it like connected to your avatar that then has certain things in a metaverse, or you could connect it to your profile that then has multiple avatars and really be able to track and do things. But just to understand, the wallet solution that you have is then basically sitting, like right now it's, you said, is not being secured by Polkadot, right? You are, how is it being secured?
So the wallet and the protocol are two different things.
Yes, exactly.
Um,
But the protocol has to be secured in a way, right? The wallet is just a way for you to read what's happening in the protocol, correct?
exactly. And to hold your data, which is also not connected with the protocol. At least the verifiable credentials aren't, because you don't want to put personal identifiable information on chain, like ever.
Makes sense.
But yeah, what we are evolving there from an experimental stage, which we're still in, which is still centralized, towards full decentralization. again, we don't feel like being an identity maximalist, as in like building the decentralized structure for everything to be pure and fine, but not having users is the right way. So we're not focusing on that. We will get there, but we're focusing on actual usage. And how that could look like is we are just about to make a change. So we have been going from incentivizing data provisioning, which means like the Fractal wallet collected the surfing behavior for yourself, again, not for our central servers. And we built in a proof where users could show that they have been collecting data. We didn't know what, but we knew that they have been collecting that data and they've been incentivized. So the AdTech ecosystem is far, far out. So we said, let's focus on ID. Let's incentivize users to hold credentials. So this is the switch that we're making very shortly. So what we'll have is we will see, has a user had a credential? And then this is the way how you mint tokens from the Fractal protocol. So still, there is nothing happening on the Fractal protocol that would require deep security at this point. Now this is going to change because we're going to add attestations on the Fractal protocol so that it serves as the central hub for attestations that are happening everywhere. Something happens in Polygon, great. We'll have it. We are kind of like the attestation aggregator, where we go, for example, to the kill chain and take a look at attestations there. And this is not just identity information, but this is all types of behavior information that someone chooses to write on chain. Just so
So
that
basically, you'll be scraping different chains and then back checking if there is some correlation to whatever the wallet addresses that are related to your users to kind of add information there, or how does that work in practice?
So how it will work in practice is that there are no attestations out there. And the Fractal attestations registries with
What do you mean
150,000 users.
what do you mean the attestations? What do you mean with that?
What I mean is that beyond proof of concepts, there has not been an implementation that actually uses DRDs on chain. There is none, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And so there are no attestations that you use the word scrape, but that you couldn't aggregate. So in the next half year to a year, we don't expect it to be more than Fractal attestations or our clients' own attestations that they made because they are using the system. So just to give you a very specific example, we have this one partner that we're working with that we're really excited about, and they have an amazing product around DAO tooling. So DAOs need a Discord-like service, a Medium-like service, but also Web3 native services like an ability to airdrop or for the community to vote. Now, those two Web2 companies, they don't really work for the Web3 world. So they built something that kind of has this all included. Now, DAOs just have the ability to do token-based voting. So the more tokens you have, the more say you have, which is like, I don't know, kind of feudalistic, right? So we are partnering up with them to provide them with credentials so they can enable one person, one vote. That they can enable spaces where anonymous yet proven humans can enter. You can still call yourself whatever your handle is, but this way we know it's not a duplicate account or it's not a bot. So what do they want to do? They might want to say, you know what? There are certain behaviors that we like to see. For example, you're a power user, and we want to then write it on chain to enable different use cases. And that's the world that we are starting to see coming up, because then when you tell people about that, like, oh, interesting, I could actually do this and this, and they are usually surprising us with the use cases that they come up with. Do we know how it's going to look like? No. We're also just fishing in the dark. We build something, we see if people flock to it, if it makes sense, or if it needs to evolve. We feel pretty bullish on the registries, but what do I know? Maybe the credential API is the way forward, or everyone is waiting for verifiable credentials to be with users in their own wallets.
Yeah, time will tell this, but they're all very interesting topics, and I guess one cannot build everything at the same time. So we need to make the bets on where you lay your focus at some points, and then
Exactly.
again, and we know that every software development infrastructure has the same issue, right? Yeah, but that's really amazing. I mean, I would love to catch up with you also about more specifics of that and see if we can play with that as well, and we'll talk to our developers as well, because it's very interesting, and see into which point we can potentially collaborate. I can see a few potential use cases there. And if you want, I mean, I know you are in Berlin, please come visit us in our office. We are here in Kreuzberg, and it would be
Cool. Not too
nice.
far away.
Yeah, where are you in?
Wiener Straße, which is kind of like the crypto Bermuda Triangle.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
So close to Gurley.
We are in Glogauer Straße here, in front of
Yeah.
the canal, so pretty
Yeah.
far, pretty close. Yes, and yes, I wanted to really thank you for taking this time and really being able to share like what you're working on and what Fractal is up to, and also this like future visions for what it could be. I think this is super interesting space that you're like exploring there, and yeah, and it's great that you're sticking to the exploration, because that's the way that we increase the chances of hitting it right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Not the 5-year build up of a monolith that is then not going to be used.
yeah, that's really good. Also, I really enjoyed the focus on the users and really being able to serve them. I think this is also lays on the core of how we think as well. It's a fundamental to build something successful. Yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
amazing, super good. So thanks so much, and yes, we will be in touch. I will just
Yeah.
all right.
Pedro, thanks for your time.
Thank you.